Yeah, let's get a headline in from our business editor Sharmila. Sharmila, what's your big headline today? If you were doing a newspaper, which are well, anyway newspapers are out of fashion, but if you were doing a newspaper, what would be the 8-column headline?
A lot of people will be very angry with that statement, Arnab. But yeah, clearly, with the finance minister giving a very stable budget layout with no major changes, we will expect the market to be stable. The numbers are just coming in. And also, as you just said, that no big sops, no big doles going to be given out. The government has already said that they're quite saturated on the social schemes front. So which means that more and more capex will be diverted towards growth, manufacturing, etc., industry, which is also great for generating employment in the long term. And so I think it's a very prudent budget and not a populist one. And the government did not really try to prove any point and just stayed on its own long-term vision. So I think the government stays on its long-term growth vision is a headline that I can give you right now, Arnab.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's go to Sumit Mehta also. Sumit, what do you think?
Arnab, this is an amazing budget. First thing is, no bad news, no changes is one very big good news. Second thing is the confidence that the government has in spearheading the infrastructure development. You look at Gati Shakti. When Gati Shakti Yojana was announced, the government endeavored to reduce the logistics cost, which is around 14% of the GDP, to around 8%. And for that, the kind of infrastructure that is being built, the Sagarmala project, the connectivity of rail and roads to the ports, improving the efficiency of the ports, improving the turnaround time of the ships, docking in Indian ports. This is one very big positive. Second thing is, if we look at the way government has gone ahead to reduce litigations, that is one very big reform from this government side. Up to 25,000 rupees, any tax litigation which has been going on for ages and ages, is finally we are seeing a closure of that. This is a very big relief for many businessmen and also for the medium class taxpayers also who have been facing this kind of receipts. One very glaring factor I would like to tell you, numbers. Honorable Finance Minister talked about 34 lakh crore rupees of leakages being stopped by this particular government. 34 lakh crore rupees as a percentage of GDP is around 11% of the GDP. Government has saved leakages to the extent of 11% of the GDP, and that is the real success of the government, that they have been able to go for progressive welfareism in the state, at the same time invest heavily in infrastructure and build the kind of infrastructure which is now at from 10 lakh crores, it is now increased to around 11.1 lakh crore rupees. And also very importantly, increase the overall expenditure by the state in infrastructure, that has gone up. Public spending in infrastructure has gone up, and I think this is a very progressive budget. It also talks about the government's confidence that reforms will continue. I like to add two things. Jim Rogers had said that there is a lot of bureaucracy. My experience as a chartered accountant.
I think, Sumit, that is the point.
When I started articleship.
No, Sumit, I think that is the main point. The government has not presented what would be described, Ashish, as an election budget. Am I right, Abhishek?
Yeah,
Ashish, this is not an election budget, and that's what I like about it.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there were expectations in this budget that government will announce a lot of SOPs. But if you look at it, the capital expenditure which mostly people said would be around 8 to 10% is upwards of 11.1%. So capital expenditure, which is at 3.4% of GDP, has come as an absolute surprise. You just ask somebody right now, what would be the headline for tomorrow? I think the headline, if it were a newsprint, it would be governance, development and performance, a new definition for GDP that the government has come out with. The white paper that the government has proposed on the Indian economy is, I think, a step in absolutely the right direction. The finance minister spoke about, Jan Dhan account. Now, the French president was here, so I'd just like to give it in terms of that perspective. French population is 6.7 crores, whereas India, Jan Dhan accounts opened in the last 9 years is upwards of 51 crores. And the amounts lying in that, when people said, these are waste of time and there will hardly be anything, it will be a problem to manage these accounts. The amounts in these accounts are 2.1 lakh crores. I think overall, if you see, government has stuck to its path when it comes to even the glide part for fiscal. I think one person who got it right, and he's on this panel, and I cannot but mention, is PK. He was the only one who kept on saying that the GDP growth will be higher than 7.5%. He's the only one who kept on saying that the government can surprise you on the fiscal deficit side, and what it is, against 5.9 and still sticking to 4.6 by FY 2026. I can see PK, a smile on PK's face. PK,
yeah, he was
you
spot
got
on.
it right.
He was absolutely spot on.
Yeah, well, I think both in terms of growth and in terms of the fiscal deficit numbers, the government is outperforming expectations by a long way. I think in terms of growth, the numbers, they are still very cautious, but I think they are going to do a lot better than the implicit growth numbers that are in the budget projection. So I'd say that the improving
Just
trend.
one last point that I want to make before I give it to you, PK. No change. There was some There were fears that there could be some tinkling with the STT, and that's not happened. There is no change in tax, so no change is actually a huge positive. That's the only point I wanted to make. PK, sorry to interrupt.
No. One more point I wanted to add was that one interesting mention by the Honorable Finance Minister, FDI, first develop India. Now that's going to catch a lot of headlines tomorrow on the print media, because that's a very strong message, though lightheartedly said, but first develop India. That's a very, very interesting message. And I come from an industry where mutual funds I sell, so I understand one thing, that the domestic inflows, be it through the SIPs or the mutual funds, have ensured that we are no longer dependent on the FIIs. So remember, there will be a day and age where we will be completely self-sustained, and that's a great messaging, not politically necessarily, but that's a great messaging for sustenance and growth of internal consumption and India as a whole.
Allow me one point in continuation to what you just said, Arnab. Pre-budget, we discussed about all the external headwinds. Whereas what this gentleman just pointed out is that, and that's absolutely right, India's dependence on foreign investment and foreign institutional investment has gone down substantially as the rise in financial savings as a concept in India. So even if there are, headwinds and external headwinds, India and particularly Indian markets over a long term have the ability to now face them with enough amount of firepower which is in-house.
Yes, absolutely. I think Sandeep's been wanting to chip in as well. Sandeep.
I wanted to make a small point. One consistent feature of Nirmala Sitharaman's last 6 budget is every time, as you were saying, people think it's going to be a populist budget, it's going to be an election budget. I think she has stayed the course. And that's in line with Narendra Modi's thing, not taking those short-term measures.
No short-term.
No short-term.
No short-term.
And also the white paper, Arnab, everybody asked Narendra Modi, why didn't you present this white paper in 2014? And he had said, if I presented then, there would have been a total shaking of confidence on India in the global economy. So today, I think is the appropriate time to put it on record, so that, as you said, all the WhatsApp misinformation and all the canards which opposition will spread is put to rest before the next term.
Yeah, because that's the real issue. What happens is that you can have all the structural reforms, the fundamental changes made over a period of time, but then you can narrow it down in an election season to that one point. That one point can be gas cylinder prices. That one point can be a momentary period of consumer price inflation, right? And the numbers can be taken out of context to give an impression. And that's the real story, isn't it? I mean, Sharmila, that the impression is given, oh, economy is doing great, but what is it doing for you? Oh, well, the country is doing great according to Narendra Modi, but only a couple of business houses are benefiting. What is it doing for you? What is it doing for unemployment? What is it doing for inflation? What is it doing for the prices of essential commodities. And I think it is very, very important right now in election season and even otherwise to set the record straight. If the government doesn't set the record straight, it will not have the popular support to continue with the structural reforms, which may appear to be made to be too harsh for the common man, benefiting only the upper middle class and the rich and the affluent and the corporate houses. So I think government's got to be very conscious of that, Sharmila. Very, very conscious of that.
Absolutely.
You know, especially in election season. So I think this is good. I mean, it's very, very good that we're going to have a counter, and I think we should have a proper debate on that as well. Yes, Sharmila.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as we see that the thrust of the government is on the manufacturing sector and its heart is in the right place when it comes to expanding manufacturing in the country, which in turn will generate employment. So if we are talking about the growth of the nation and increasing PCI, then we definitely know that manufacturing industry is going to drive that. And if we are continuing to be dependent on subsidies, eventually it's going to benefit the economy. So to actually come up with small, hitting out at the government with on subsidies, etc., is pointless. Because if you see the long-term gain of this plan of this current government, it is completely driven towards making the nation a developed nation, and it's doing the right things at the right time to move it in the right direction. So there has to be a comprehensive economic understanding about the macro indicators and the macro picture right now. And also, we should, while you, Arnab, say that we are self-congratulatory, but we do have enough reasons to congratulate ourselves that at the time when the globe is facing a recessionary situation, India is emerging as a fastest growing economy. So if the globe has its trust in India, we are doing something right. Yes.
But Sharmila, I'll just take this point forward here. You know, for anything that you want to do, your fundamentals must be strong.
Right.
If your political fundamentals are not strong, you can't move. Now, there are two approaches to such a situation, PK, Sandeep. Well, government strong, there's a lot of popular support. Narendra Modi is the most popular Prime Minister. He's going to break all records, and hence, at this point of time, the work will speak for itself. But that's not often the case, Sandeep. You know, we're, for example, you and I right now in our Kolkata studios, and in the Trinamool Congress puts out the tweets, you know, what happened to the jobs? They say prices have gone up by 64%. Garib Kalyan, Achhe Din have yielded no results. Farmers are committing suicide. We need actual numbers. The government needs to put its skin in the game, Sandeep. It needs to put the numbers and not look the other way. It cannot depend on the BJP IT cell to be responding. There has to be a response from the government. That better come soon.
Narendra Modi is again very conscious of that, India rising example, which people keep quoting. Even the other day, Jairam Ramesh was saying, remember India, not India rising, India shining at that point in time. And that repeat, that's why he was putting the points straight in. And the point you made earlier, there is support, there is the base level. Now he is focusing on increasing the income at the bottom of the pyramid, putting more money in people's hands to spend. And one point, last point, that day I was again hearing a Congress spokesperson saying people are having to return to the rural areas because there are no
people are having to
return to the rural areas because there is no job in the cities. Going back to the villages is not a bad thing. And if you are really having employment opportunities there and high value addition, a lot of high net worth individuals today want to become farmers. They're going in for doing farming, organic farming and this and that. So if these kind of rural emphasis is given and people are going to
Okay, we have Rajnath Singh's soundbite coming. Can I just play that?
बहुत ही उत्साहवर्धक है और आगे के लिए भी और अधिक आशाएं बढ़ती हैं और भारत की इकॉनमी की साइज जितनी इस समय है इसमें पूरी तरह से मैं आश्वस्त हूं इस इंटरिम बजट के कारण ही जो भी इंडिकेशन इस बजट से मिले हैं कि हमारी इकॉनमी जो आज दुनिया की टाइप 5 कंट्रीज में है उसकी साइज बढ़कर 2027 तक मोर देन $5 ट्रिलियन जाएगी और 2030 आते आते मोर देन $7 ट्रिलियन तक पहुंचेगी।
2047 का जो एक रोड मैप दिया है प्रधानमंत्री,
या उस रोड मैप उस टारगेट को हम अचीव करेंगे, हम लोग पूरी तरह से कॉन्फिडेंट हैं।
थैंक यू सर।